Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into some PvE content. So, what I have for you guys this time around is the summer side story event, the Suspicious Hot Springs. Now, I know that there's a lot of controversy going on about this side story, and a lot of heated debate and opinions getting thrown around. I just want to preface this video by saying that I am not in any way supporting this type of side story event. I know a lot of people are labeling it as things like pay to win. I think that this type of side story has a lot of potential. I think that people are very excited about the prospect of being able to farm some epic gear, especially on sets like Penetration and Torrent that are typically pretty gated for little like early and mid-game players that can't access KDs, or maybe you're too lazy to access KDs. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, and I hope Smilegate has more of these types of events in the future. The only thing being that the fact that Summer Luluca imprints are kind of needed for some of the more challenging stages, or at least to drastically reduce the difficulty of those later stages, I think is kind of a miss on Smilegate's part. Now, what you have in the background here that you're seeing is me clearing the level 4 difficulty without using Summer Luluca. I'll show you guys the stats and stuff a little later after this run is complete, but it is definitely not something that's super accessible and not something I would say is very practical. The full run of this took about 10 minutes, and it uses units that, you know, are kind of not everybody has available to them, right? Lionheart Sirmia aside, like, you don't necessarily need to use Lionheart Sirmia here, but you know, something like having a Alencia build or having a Charles build, not everyone has access to that, and if you're gated by, of course, not having Rowana at all, then good luck trying to cheese this side story, right? It is practically impossible, just flat out impossible. But yeah, this is my run here. I'm using Rowana in the lead key hero slot. I'm using Lionheart Sirmia. She's not really here to do much besides just kind of chip away at my opponent, at the boss with some damage, because as you can see, the boss just goes absolutely ham. Out of the 10-minute run, I'm pretty sure 5 or 6 minutes of it is just the boss using her animations. So, yeah, it's kind of dumb, right? As you can see here, my units don't even get a chance to move. Play the animation indeed. But Lionheart Sirmia will always get stripped. She'll never have her defense buff up in time to actually deal damage with. Charles is here just for his extra procs for damage. You can S1 to S2. The boss is always going to have her buffs up, so might as well take advantage of that, right? On a similar note, I do have Alencia here, and she has a chance to defense break with her Mind's Eye. I didn't bother putting on effectiveness. I didn't bother re-gearing any of my units from their PvP build. I just switched around a couple of artifacts and just called it a day. I'm not going to be farming with this. This is just a showcase that it is possible, and if you really are like super strapped for resources and you don't want to summon for Luluca, maybe you really want Lily instead, right, the boss right here. She's going to be coming out in a few weeks. And you're saving your resources, but you still want to farm the side story, maybe this can give you some ideas of what you can do. Now, this is on stage 4, the highest level difficulty you can farm, but you can definitely recreate a similar type of team like this for levels like 3 or lower. I'd say level 3 should be accessible for most people who've been playing for quite a while. If you're really new to the game, maybe you're only able to farm stage 2. This kind of reminds me of the Advent side story, and I'll be very honest, Advent is my least favorite mode in the entire game, because I'm of the mindset of two simple things when it comes to game design like this, right? One, if content is meant to be a challenge, then just keep it as a challenge, it should be a one-time thing. If content is meant to be farmable, then don't make it a challenge. Don't gatekeep people from farming the content for resources. And Advent kind of breaks the rule. Advent is very difficult and gates a lot of people from progressing. while also being a challenge. It like really is just a gear and unit check, right? Even this right here, without Summer Luluca, you're pretty much just a unit checked into oblivion, right? Do you have these types of units to just brute force your way through the content, right? So I'm reaching the point where I think this is the 50% health mark. Yeah, there we go. So we leave behind our 3 units and Rowana advances, and this is the second half. I chose a pretty cheese team for this, I'll be honest. Mort is actually here for good reason. Once he gets his rage buff up with his S3, you can ignore resistance with your S1, so you can defense break the boss without having to build effectiveness. And Bologna with her focus and ML Bologna with her fighting spirit, this actually just lets you almost infinitely like loop if you're lucky enough and the boss keeps countering like this on every hit. Keep in mind the boss can also counter on extra hits like this, so you can actually see just proc the boss right there, and it's not looking too great, right? If you don't have Rowana, this is literally impossible. But you can use both Bolognas to kind of loop and just kind of keep dealing damage. It kind of helps a little bit because you're getting more damage out per boss turn, because the boss, of course Smilegate had to do this, the boss can enrage, and because the boss can enrage, if you try to go for a stall team, you just get one shot before you can even complete the stage. So yeah, it is kind of a shame that they went down this route. I was very excited for this event, and I was hoping that the imprints on the Summer Luluca will be more of a kind of luxury to have rather than a requirement. I know that a lot of people are saying that farming the level 4 difficulty, you essentially need at least a few imprints, a couple imprints on the Luluca. Now for those of you guys who've been playing for quite a while, maybe you had a Luluca or 2 laying around, you can imprint her. That's fantastic. And honestly, in the long term, you could always use a story banner or something like that. I actually don't know if Luluca has a story banner, but you can use it to kind of get some imprints. The downside is that requires time, and this is a limited time side story, so that doesn't really work out, does it? Yeah, I think hopefully moving forward, Smilegate doesn't take all the backlash and criticism that they're getting right now and just completely says, oh yeah, we won't ever do this again. Because they've done that with multiple things in the past before, where, you know, the community got really upset over certain things, and they're like, oh, okay, you don't want this, and then they just completely, like, you know, scrap the entire concept entirely without even trying to improve it. So hopefully Smilegate doesn't go down that route. Again, I think there's a lot of potential with this type of side story, and I'm sure you guys, you know, hopefully are getting some decent pieces here and there. I've already seen some people share on my Discord server some of the pieces that they've been getting, and they're looking quite nice, especially, you know, harder to get sets like Penetration in this case for this rotation. I'm looking forward to snagging some counter pieces myself, but we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, in the end, I really don't have much else to say about this. It's kind of a dumb event. Do your best to farm what you can. If you guys are looking for a guide for how to just complete this on like a level 3 difficulty, or I'll see if I can try a level 4 difficulty with like a single copy of Luluca. But yeah, we'll see what I can pull off. Level 3 is pretty accessible if you've been playing for quite a while. Most people just brute force their way through it using units like Zahak. I've seen Violet, Riolet, Alencia, Bologna's, right? So let me know what you guys think of the event in the comments section down below, and please don't use this video as a punching bag for anything, because I'm not affiliated with Smilegate, and I had no part in making this. So yeah, this is just me throwing out a video out there, giving you guys some ideas for those of you who are really, really desperate and just need to see like how you can farm an event like this. My advice is don't farm level 4, just farm level 3 if you really can't farm level 4 consistently. You're not missing out on much. You can still clear out the entire shop over the course of the event. So you just might get some, you know, a little bit less pieces here and there of gear, but in the end, it doesn't really matter, right? But with that said, I'll show you guys the units in a little bit. I'll let this run finish up, so sit back and enjoy the awful fight. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at my stats for these teams. I have Rowana as the key unit here, and she is actually going to be the unit that you saw that carried everybody. She's on Shimadra's staff, so increases healing output from her passive, and it's actually a pretty considerable amount. She's not just on counter and resist gear. I have her on her PvP build. I typically try not to change my gear around for these types of events, and I'm kind of low on gold as well, so it's kind of hard to swap to prepare for something like this. But next up we got Alencia. Alencia is kind of crucial here for some defense breaks occasionally. She is pretty good because of her Mind's Eye, which gives her 50% effectiveness, so even if you have 0 effectiveness like me, there's a chance that you can still land those defense breaks. Ideally though, you give her a little bit of effectiveness and she'll be even more consistent. Now, my Alencia here, again, it's not ideal to be on an injury build because it adds no value to the fight. However, it's what gear I have, and I, again, don't like changing gear when faced with these PvP situations. Next up, we got Charles. Charles is here because I just threw him on. This was probably like my 4th time attempting this, but yeah, Charles ended up being a pretty nice unit just because of the fact that he can counter, he has the extra hits, the boss is always going to have buffs on because I can't reliably strip them, so he's always going to have a really high chance of proccing his S1 into an S2, which just means more damage. Put him on Elbrus for this fight, and have him on the extra chance to go from slash to smash. Alright, moving on to the last one, we got Lionheart Sirmia. So this is not like a free-to-play friendly type of team comp, but my Lionheart Sirmia is still on her same PvP build. I just changed her artifact from Proof of Valor to Draco Plate, just so I can output a little bit of extra damage. But other than that, you know, Lionheart Sirmia just kind of does her thing. She doesn't actually benefit too much from her passive. It just allows her to S3 more often. She's a pretty bulky unit. She doesn't get to keep her defense buff. It gets stripped like super consistently and super often, so you'll almost never have it when you're popping your S3. For the bottom team here, it's actually quite interesting because Mort is a really good option for this if you're planning on doing this for some reason without Summer Luluca, because when he has his rage buff, he can actually ignore resistance for his defense break on his S1. Have him on Elbrus Ritual Sword just to get some extra chances of proccing his counter to get that defense break. But the real superstars of this are the double Bellonas. So first one is the Lone Crescent Bellona. I have her on Sigurd's Scythe, and she's on counter and pen set. The counter can come in handy for just dealing extra damage and hitting the boss a couple more times so that the boss will continue countering. And Bellona will gain Fighting Spirit, and so with the Fighting Spirit, she'll activate her kind of extra attack, and that extra attack can still proc more boss counters. So you enter this kind of loop that you guys saw in the video of the fight. And if you add in Seaside Bellona as well, where she has focus stacks, where she gets 5 focus, she gets the extra hits, yeah, it becomes pretty excessive, and it's pretty fun to see. I have on Ringer's Special Drink. If your Bellona's having trouble surviving, you can switch this off. It didn't really add all that much damage to the fight, honestly. But a little bit of chip damage here and there helped out a little bit. I didn't max out this EE because I don't really like this EE. There's no reason to use the cleansing one, so I just went for the extra damage. This actually helped quite a bit to speed up the run here. But the cleansing doesn't matter because the boss is going to apply debuffs to you regardless. And those debuffs actually don't affect Seaside Bellona's performance, so it worked out in the end. If you guys are interested in seeing Summer Luluca in action though, make sure to be subscribed because that video is going to be coming out later today. Until next time, take care.